When Daniel picked me up in that old silver trailer, dust still clinging to the sides from God knows where, I thought it would be just the two of us. That was the whole point, right? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. A spontaneous road trip through national parks and small towns. His idea of reconnecting after a year of silence between us. We used to be close, really close. But then he started dating Linda, and everything shifted. He stopped texting back, canceled plans, always busy, always with her. So when he invited me, saying he missed me, I said yes. I packed light. A few tank tops, shorts, hiking shoes, my camera. I was ready for some dusty trails and awkward campfires. What I wasn't ready for was the passenger already sitting in the front seat when I walked up. Linda. "Hey," she said with a smile that felt just a little too bright, too casual. She had on mirrored sunglasses and a messy bun, her bare legs propped up on the dash like she'd already made herself comfortable. I froze at the step of the trailer, my bag still slung over my shoulder. "You didn't tell me she was coming," I said to Daniel, my voice low, tight. He gave me that sheepish grin he always used when he knew he'd screwed up. "Thought it'd be fine. She really wanted to see Yellowstone." "Yellowstone? Sure, that's why." I climbed in anyway. What was I supposed to do? Turn around and Uber home with my pride and a backpack full of bug spray? Linda scooted to make space beside her on the cushioned bench. "I'm really glad you came, Olivia," she said. "Seriously." I gave her a tight smile and didn't answer. The first few days were weird. The trailer was tight, especially in summer heat. Daniel drove most of the time, windows down, music low. We stopped at red canyons, mountain lakes, sunflower fields off dusty back roads. The scenery was stunning. Almost enough to distract from how tense everything felt. Almost. Daniel thought things were going well. He kept pointing out wildlife, making dumb jokes, trying to bridge the gap. But every time Linda offered to help me with sunscreen or handed me water after a hike, I flinched a little. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't know why she looked at me like that. She wore soft cotton dresses and no bra. Her hair always damp from river swims, skin sun-kissed and glowing. I tried not to notice. I tried not to watch her stretch in the mornings or bite the corner of her lip when she read. But in a trailer that small, you notice everything. One evening, after a long hike to some forgotten lake in Utah, we made camp near the shore. The sun was setting in deep orange layers, casting shadows across the still water. Daniel was exhausted and passed out early inside the trailer, limbs sprawled, one arm over his eyes. I stayed outside, sitting on the faded picnic blanket with a can of cider, watching the sky shift. Linda came out barefoot, her tank top loose and dipping low, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. I shrugged, and she sat. Close. Close enough that her thigh brushed mine when she crossed her legs. We didn't speak for a while. The air was warm and soft, scented with pine and damp earth. A loon cried in the distance. "I think he's trying," she said finally, voice quiet. I glanced at her. "Trying what?" "To make things right with you." I stared out at the lake. "He could have told me you were coming." "I know," she said. "I asked him to." That caught me off guard. I turned to her. "Why?" She hesitated. "Because I wanted to see you." Her voice was calm, steady, but she didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the water as if the answer were floating somewhere out there. My heart kicked once, hard. "You barely know me," I said. "I've seen pictures, heard stories." She looked down at her hands. "But that wasn't it. I got the feeling you hated me, and I didn't want that to be true." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Eventually, she shifted, lying back on the blanket and pulling the edges of the fabric up to her chin. "I get cold easily," she said, even though it was still warm. I stayed sitting, knees pulled up to my chest. "Where's your hoodie?" "Inside." But Daniel's snoring, and I didn't want to wake him. She looked up at me. "You look like you belong out here." I blinked. "What?" "I don't know. You just fit. The way you sit so still, like you're part of it. Like the silence doesn't scare you." It was such an odd thing to say, so strangely gentle, that I had to look away. After a few more minutes of silence, she whispered, "You can lie down too. There's room." And before I could stop myself, I did. I lay beside her, not touching, the blanket between us. But I could feel her warmth, her shoulder inches from mine. Our knees nearly aligned. Crickets hummed. The stars blinked into focus above us, bright and endless. "You ever feel like you're missing something important?" she asked softly. "Like life is happening just outside your line of sight?" I turned my head toward her. Her eyes were still on the sky, but her lips trembled just a little when she exhaled. "Yeah," I said, "all the time." She smiled faintly, and then her hand under the blanket found mine, just the backs of our fingers touching. I didn't pull away. We left Utah the next morning with Linda still asleep when Daniel fired up the engine, sunlight already slipping through the blinds in pale gold streaks. I pretended I hadn't been awake for hours, lying there next to her, counting the inches between our bodies and wondering why none of it felt like a mistake. By the time she stirred, Daniel had us halfway down a scenic byway lined with wildflowers and empty hills. She sat up with a yawn and tied her hair into a loose knot, thanking him for letting her sleep in. Her eyes flicked toward me, briefly, but said nothing else. Like the night before hadn't happened. But something had. I carried it with me the whole day. In my chest, in my skin. The softness of her hand against mine still haunted me, burned into memory like heat off asphalt. We stopped in a tiny mountain town that afternoon. Daniel wanted local coffee, and Linda wanted to stretch her legs. I wanted space. We parked the trailer in a gravel lot, and I told them I was heading to the overlook by myself for some quiet. 5 minutes later, I heard footsteps crunch behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. "Figured you might get lost," Linda said lightly. I snorted. "One road, two trees, riveting maze." She walked up beside me and leaned on the old wooden rail, her shoulder brushing mine, as she stared out at the valley. Wind swept through her loose hair, and the neckline of her sleeveless shirt fluttered a little. I looked away before I looked too long. "You were quiet this morning," she said, not looking at me. "So were you." I didn't want to make it weirder. It was already weird. "Yeah," she said softly, "but not bad." I glanced at her, surprised. Her mouth was curved into the ghost of a smile. She looked impossibly calm, like she hadn't snuck into my bed under starlight and tangled up my thoughts. Back at the trailer, Daniel was lying on the bench seat with his eyes closed and a cold soda resting on his forehead. "You two hike Mount Everest?" he muttered. "I was about to send a rescue team." "Nope," Linda said, slipping past him into the tiny kitchenette. "Just needed a break from your snoring." I caught the way she said it. Too casual, practiced. Later that evening, we parked at a pine-shaded campground near a creek. There was no cell service, just birdsong and the occasional low croak of frogs. Daniel made chili in a tin pot over the fire while I sat on the edge of the trailer step, watching the flames flicker. Linda was lying in the grass nearby with her eyes closed, bathed in the golden light of dusk. Her bare feet were still dusty from the trail, one knee bent, shirt rising slightly as she stretched her arms over her head. Daniel kept talking about some trail he wanted us to try the next day, but I didn't hear much of it. That night, a thunderstorm rolled in. It started small, a low rumble over the trees, the kind that sounds like it's still hours away. I couldn't sleep. I lay in the narrow bed at the back of the trailer, tucked under a thin sheet, counting the seconds between flashes of light. I was just about to get up and grab my earbuds when the door creaked open. I froze. Soft footsteps. A pause. Then Linda's voice, a whisper in the dark. "Olivia?" My breath caught. "Yeah?" The curtain shifted. Her silhouette appeared. "Can I come in?" She didn't wait for an answer. She slid in next to me like she had the night by the lake, like her body remembered the shape of mine before even touching it. "Daniel's dead to the world," she whispered, tugging the blanket up around her legs. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. We lay in the dark, the thunder rolling louder now, the trailer shivering with wind. Rain started tapping the metal roof, soft and rhythmic. I could feel the heat of her, even without touching. Every inch of me was awake. "Do you think this is wrong?" she asked suddenly. I turned my head. "What?" "Us. Her voice cracked slightly. "Being here. Feeling this." I didn't answer right away, because the truth felt like a blade. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but it doesn't feel fake." She exhaled slowly. "That's what scares me." Her hand found mine again, not by accident this time. She wove our fingers together beneath the sheet. I felt her pulse in her wrist, fast, like mine. We lay like that for what felt like forever. Not kissing, not speaking, just holding hands in a bed too small for secrets. Eventually, she turned toward me. Her nose nearly brushed mine. "I almost kissed you that night," she whispered. "By the lake." "I know." Her eyes flicked to my mouth. "Do you want me to now?" My throat burned. My whole body went still. "I think about it," I said. "More than I should." But neither of us moved. Something about the storm, the darkness, the weight of Daniel sleeping not 5 feet away. It held us in a fragile kind of stillness, like the space between us might tear if we leaned in too fast. Linda settled onto her back again, our fingers still entwined. "Sometimes I feel more seen in 10 minutes with you than in a year with him," she said softly. That broke something in me. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to pull her in, crush the space between us, tell her this wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just the thrill of danger, but I didn't. Instead, I lay there with my heart threatening to break through my ribs, and the smell of rain and her skin blurring into one impossible feeling. She fell asleep like that, her fingers still curled around mine. And I stayed awake, listening to the storm, knowing we'd crossed another invisible line. I woke before the sun. The trailer was heavy with quiet. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving everything soaked and still. I could hear the soft dripping of water from pine needles, the distant calls of waking birds. Linda was still there beside me. Her hand was no longer in mine, but it was resting close, just inches away, like she'd let go sometime in the night, but hadn't moved far. Her mouth was slightly parted. Her lashes curled dark against her cheeks. She looked peaceful, like none of this was breaking her open from the inside. I wanted to stay in that moment, just long enough to pretend we hadn't made things impossible. But then Daniel stirred in the front cot. A sharp breath, the sound of him sitting up, stretching, a yawn. And Linda opened her eyes. She looked at me like she didn't know where she was at first. Then it hit her. Her face changed, just slightly, her features tightening around the edges, like she was slipping back into a mask she hadn't meant to take off. Without a word, she sat up, fixed her tank top, and padded toward the kitchenette. By the time Daniel turned around, she was pouring coffee like it was any other morning. Smiling, barefoot, normal. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, pulse ringing in my ears. Eventually, I dragged myself out. No one said anything about the night. No questions, no glances. It was like the storm had washed it away. We drove to the coast that day. A long stretch of cliffs and low fog rolling in from the ocean. Daniel played music. Linda sat up front again, legs crossed, sunglasses on. I sat in the back, pretending to read. That evening, we parked on a quiet bluff overlooking the Pacific. The view was breathtaking. Endless silver waves and the kind of wind that felt like it could peel your thoughts away. Daniel made a fire. He offered beers. Tried to get me to laugh. He didn't notice the way Linda kept glancing toward me or how quiet I'd become. Eventually, he went back inside to nap, leaving just the two of us outside. Linda stood near the edge of the cliff, arms crossed over her chest, hair whipping in the wind. I walked up behind her. "You should put on a hoodie," I said. "I don't feel cold," she murmured. We stood in silence. The sun was dipping behind the water, painting everything in amber and blue. Waves crashed below like distant thunder. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. "You left before I woke up," I said finally. "I had to," she said. "Why?" She turned to me, her face caught in half light. "Because I didn't know what I would say if you looked at me like it mattered." My chest tightened. "It does," I said. Her eyes closed for a second. "I know." She stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until we were standing toe to toe, the wind pulling at our clothes. "I'm not pretending anymore," she said. "Not with you." I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking. She reached out and took them, held them between her own. "You feel like gravity." I blinked. "What?" "I keep telling myself I'll stay upright," she whispered. "But then you walk into the room and I'm already falling." I don't know who kissed who first. All I know is that we met in the middle, and it was soft at first, slow and uncertain, like something that had been waiting too long. Her lips were warm, familiar. Her breath caught when I kissed her back. But then she deepened it, and I felt the ache of every word she hadn't said, every choice she didn't know how to make. When we broke apart, we were both breathless. "This isn't fair," I said, voice shaking. "I know," she said. "But it's real." We sat together near the edge, her shoulder resting against mine. The sun slipped fully below the horizon, leaving only twilight and quiet. "I don't know what happens next," I said. She nodded slowly. "Me neither." Back at the trailer, Daniel was heating canned soup and talking about driving south tomorrow. Linda sat across from him, smiling like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just kissed his sister with the kind of hunger that leaves bruises. I didn't say much. I watched her hands. I noticed how they trembled slightly when she passed him a spoon. That night, she didn't come to my bed. I lay awake for hours, waiting for footsteps that never came. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of ocean cliffs and the taste of her mouth. In the morning, the trailer was filled with sunlight and the scent of instant coffee. Linda was already dressed, braiding her hair. Daniel was packing up outside. I lingered at the door, watching her. She looked at me once, briefly, and that look said everything. That she remembered, that she felt it, that she was scared. "I'm not good at this," she said, so softly I almost missed it. "Neither am I." "I don't want to lie to him." "Then don't." "But I don't want to lose you either." I stepped forward, close enough to smell her skin. "You already have me," I said, "even if you shouldn't." She reached up and touched my wrist. Just a second. Just enough. Then she stepped back. "We should go," she said, her voice steady now. "The coast highway's waiting."